I'm so pleased to see you back here in Davos.
Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Rita. I hope you all are doing well. So there has been a lot going on in the news regarding the illegals, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about why we are not supposed to call them illegals all of a sudden, according to the State Department, and also why Joe Biden is not going to do anything to close the borders, why his enforcers, Democrats and people in local politicians and other city councils are not going to do anything to close out the sanctuary city. As a matter of fact, they're going to do everything they can to stop citizens, just like in Chicago, from being able to vote on whether or not they want to remain a sanctuary city. So let's get into it without further ado. So a couple of years ago, we on this channel talked about the World Economic Forum. For those of you who don't know, the World Economic Forum, but I'm sure if you're here, you probably already do, but just quickly, the World Economic Forum is basically an organization of unelected officials from the world who work in conjunction with heads of state, other types of politicians, even some of our politicians here in the US, including Joe Biden. As you saw at the clip in the beginning, he was talking to the guy who runs the whole thing, or who is in charge of the whole thing, the face of the WEF, Klaus Schwab, the guy who says you will own nothing and be happy. Joe Biden is fully involved with this, and the WEF is, like I said, a conglomeration of unelected officials, corporate America, companies like BlackRock and Chase, JP Morgan, and others, the world banking systems. So you get the picture. They meet in Davos, Switzerland every year to talk about basically how they're going to restructure society.
Very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
My plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better, Britain After Coronavirus.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it. It is called the Great Reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
What they are calling this restructuring now, or reimagining, you've been hearing the term reimagining a lot. We've been hearing that ever since COVID, right? This term reimagining. So what their idea is to reimagine the world for the sake of climate, of course. And what they are proposing is that we get rid of all fossil fuels, all farting cows, and that, remember, AOC proposed in her Green New Deal, and we all laughed at, thought it was a big joke, and thought she was a complete, idiot for even saying such a thing. But the fact of the matter is, this is what these people have in store for us, the elitists. This is what they have in store for the rest of the world. And so let's just, like I said, get right into it. So a couple of years ago, I showed you guys this wheel, right? This wheel that I'm going to post up right here. And I call this actually the Wheel of Horrors. This is the strategy that the World Economic Forum, again, working with governments to implement. Okay, and as you can see on this wheel, there is a lot of stuff here. What we're going to talk about today specifically is migration and what their views are on migration. Now, why is this important to us? Well, this is important because 167, I think, United Nations states have agreed to this idea of migration. They have agreed essentially to open their borders to the third world, because the goal is to transform the whole world and to just to obliterate the borders altogether. And I actually had to use the VPN this time in order to access the World Economic Forum's page. Now, maybe it's just me, but just you going on, like, to use Safari or whatever search engine you're using without a VPN, it gave me an access forbidden error code. So I could not access anything on the WEF's website. I had to use a VPN to even access these strategic goals this time around. So I don't know if it's just me and my computer, or if this is something that they're doing where they are now not allowing people in the US to be able to view their website. So try it. It's weforum.org. I'm going to put the links below, of course, so you can play around on this wheel. They won't let you drill down as deep as you might like, but they do give you a good synopsis at the beginning of what the goal, these different points are. So today we're going to talk about, like I said, migration. So I'm going to read these sections to you, and then we're going to go to our United States, our U.S. Department of State to see that and read something from their website that shows that they are completely in alignment with what is going on here. Okay, so let's start off with what the World Economic Forum, along with the UN, has agreed that this is going to be their policy on migration. Unelected people. Migration, securitization, and rhetoric. Curation from the International Organization for Migration. That's another organization that, if you are interested, I would go ahead and check them out too. The tendency to frame migration in security terms was aggravated by the advent of COVID-19. The securitization of migration. Do you see how they're calling it the securitization of migration? So what is securitization of migration? Borders. Making sure that we're checking people at the border, we're not allowing certain people in. That's securitizing it, right? Making it secure. So they're saying the securitization in quotes, as in they don't believe in that, obviously. So the securitization of migration, or the public discussion of migration issues in security terms, rather than in economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian terms, has been fueled by pivotal geopolitical events like the end of the Cold War and the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. The mass movement of Syrian refugees and other migrants to and through Europe in 2015 and 2016 further escalated this trend by more closely linking migration with terrorism in media coverage and on social media. So you see what they're saying. They're saying that that this idea of terrorism is the reason that people are feeling some kind of way about this mass migration thing that we're seeing. More recently, COVID-19 was widely and erroneously portrayed as a public health emergency specifically linked to migrants entering some countries, which helped to fuel increases in xenophobic racism. Just a rule of thumb, anytime you hear xenophobic racism, you already know that this is a progressive stance. We talk a lot about language on this channel. This is the type of language that people use who are socialists actually use this language. This is language to cast some kind of a shadow or cast some kind of conspiracy theory title onto people who disagree with things like mass migration and other things, right? So to say xenophobic means you're afraid of change or you're racist somehow. We've all heard this before. So again, when you hear this term xenophobic and racist, and you already know where it's going to go. Okay, let's continue on here. Especially directed to people of Asian descent. By late 2021, the organization Stop AAPI Hate had recorded more than 9,000 incident reports of anti-Asian incidents, including taunts and outright assaults in the U.S., for example, and according to Human Rights Watch, several political parties and groups, including in the U.S., UK, Italy, Spain, Greece, France, and Germany, latched on to the health crisis to advance anti-immigrant, ultra-nationalist, and xenophobic conspiracy theories that demonize refugees and foreigners. There's the word again. Of course, now you are an anti-immigrant nationalist, xenophobic conspiracy theorist if you do not agree with open borders. I'll continue on. This was not the first time a global health crisis spurred increased prejudice toward minority groups. One study published by researchers at Florida State University in the U.S. noted a long related history that includes blaming Jewish communities for the spread of the bubonic plague and the Ebola virus fueling anti-African racism in Europe. The characterization of migration as a national security threat negatively affects public discourse and is at odds with reality. So the reality is not that people are flooding into the borders all over the Western countries without being properly vetted. That is not a reality. The reality, obviously, is that everybody who's coming in are our friends. We should put them in our homes, as some of our politicians have told us, right? Okay. Migration poses challenges, but also comes with significant benefits. Politicians, especially those in opposition and far-right activists, engaging in divisive campaigns that paint migrants as a criminal element, are placing short-term gain above longer-term social progress and prosperity. This was true in the lead up to the adoption of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. That is something that we are going to talk about, this Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. This is something that our Department of State has signed on to. Let me continue. When far-right groups incorrectly stated that the compact poses threats to national sovereignty, which was at a time of relative prosperity and peace, when there was no COVID-19 pandemic or related financial crises in sight. Economic fundamentals were strong, diversity was never greater, diversity is our strength. Social cohesion was largely working, and peace generally prevailed in Europe and elsewhere. Now, why did I read these two paragraphs? Because this is the plan for coming from the UN. This is coming from the World Economic Forum, again, unelected leaders who partner with our governments in the West to push open borders. Now, let me go to our, I would highly recommend you check out this wheel. The last time we talked about this wheel in a video I did, I'll post it, drop it here, post it up here. We talked about a lot in this wheel, and it was sort of a dense video. It was sort of dense, but we did talk a lot about what's going on in here, how these people are behind the social justice, the no justice, no peace movement. They are behind much of this because this basically is, we call it globalization, and it is, but it's one big globalization in a way that wants to make every single country a socialist country, open borders, one world government, the whole bit, okay? One world governed by these people. So let's move on to our State Department. So I was looking up this Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, GCM it's called, and I thought that when I did a Google search for it that I was going to automatically get taken to the UN's website. But in fact, I was taken to our U.S. Department of State website, as you can see here. I will read this first little section and then move on to a little piece in here that I think is very interesting. So, in honor of the upcoming International Migrants Day, I didn't know that was the thing, did you? We released our revised U.S. National Statement on the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to orderly and humane migration around the world, including to the United States. We commit to working with other countries to enhance cooperation to manage migration in ways that are grounded in human rights, transparency, non-discrimination, responsibility sharing, and state sovereignty. Notice there that it did not say anything about laws or constitutionality. Okay. So if you click on this little part, this little highlighted part here, and there is a section in here that I want to read to you guys. Okay. And yeah, there are 7 pages called the Revised National Statement of the United States of America on the Adoption of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. Now, this is an adoption of the Global Compact that our country has agreed to adopt, okay? Without votes, without our approval, but here we are. And so this section here says, consistent with our character as a welcoming nation of opportunity and our values of compassion and human dignity, we believe it is essential to ensure that our laws and policies encourage full participation, by migrants, including refugees, in our civic life. Civic means being involved in government. Civic means voting. So when they say we want to make sure that refugees, migrants, whatever, remember, we're not calling them illegals, we're calling them all migrants. To be included in civic life, that means voting. That immigration processes and other benefits are delivered effectively and efficiently. That no person is deemed illegal or referred to in other derogatory terms, and that the federal government eliminates sources of fear and other barriers that prevent non-citizens from accessing government services available to them. Consistent with Objective 16, the Biden-Harris administration supports developing welcoming strategies that promote integration, inclusion, citizenship, and the full participation of the newest U.S. citizens in our democracy. If you remember in my last video, I talked about new Americans. Okay, expect to hear the term new Americans, new citizens. They're not just talking about people who are legally migrating here. The focus is people who are rushing our borders right now. And yeah, we talked about new Americans and that term. Also be on the lookout for climate refugees. That's another term you're going to start hearing, climate refugees. I've already started hearing some politicians kind of throw this term around a little bit, or climate migrants, that sort of thing, because the idea is that the climate change is causing people to mass migrate. That again is another talking point from this WEF and the UN. This is another thing that they're touting, that because of climate, people are racing to leave their countries to come to first world countries, because of course it's all our fault. The users, the producers of all the carbon in the developed countries, it's our fault that their lands in some of these third world countries are unlivable, or that they are poor. None of this has anything to do with all of the corrupt politicians everywhere, I'm sure, that are fleecing people, including in this country. But nah, it's because of climate that people are rushing the borders. So expect to hear climate refugees a lot. But as you can see from that section I just read, that section talking about our State Department and the Biden-Harris administration fully on board with this, fully on board with not closing the borders. As you can see, we are not even allowed to call them illegal. No person is deemed illegal. That's why they keep saying that, because our Department of State has actually joined this pact with the UN, with the WEF, this Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration Pact. And under this administration, this is also part of the Paris Climate Agreement that Trump was so adamant about getting us out of, because the Paris Climate Agreement is woven into all of this. It is one of the tentacles of that horrible wheel that we looked at. It's one of the tentacles that the UN is using in order to, and WEF and all these organizations are using to transform nations. And the first step is eliminating the borders. The second step is disarming the citizens of this country, right? Of whatever country, but specifically of this country. So you're going to hear a lot about migrants and a lot about 2A stuff, which is going on. A lot of states are moving in rapid speed, trying to disarm people because they don't want you to be able to fight against the agenda that they are putting in place. rushing us the borders with migrants and all this stuff. They don't want you to have a say-so. They don't want you to have any recourse. They want you to just lay down and take it. So that is what is going on. That is why Joe Biden is not going to close the borders. And if there are whoever is in Congress that is working with him, his foot soldiers, they are not really going to honestly try to pass a bill to close the border. They secretly don't want it passed, which is why the Senate, including a bunch of Republicans who signed on to that bill that they try to push through the House, to allow 5,000 illegals per day to enter the country. It wasn't a real border bill. So this is going on. Be sure that you keep an eye at congress.gov on your representative. Locate your representative and make sure that they are not one of the ones who are pushing to keep borders open. The other thing that's happening is a transference of wealth. We can get into that in another video. I don't want to make this video extra long. I just wanted to focus on why Joe Biden and his cronies are not going to close the border. This is part of a much bigger strategy. Again, I will put the links below so you can take a look at these things at your leisure. Until next time, ciao. God bless.